Mary Ann. Yeah, I can talk about the other books, but what I really want to talk about is the current book, the What If. It's what's called speculative fiction. So fiction means it's not fact necessarily, but this is speculative, which suggests it just may be fact. We just don't know about it yet. It talks about, an interesting tidbit. A fellow who had read the book, he thought it was nonfiction. He thought it was true. And he was sort of challenging me, maybe arguing with me a little bit about this, that this can't happen, and then I had to point out, well, it really is fiction. So then he was starting to accept it, and then I described the speculative aspect, so then he was sort of resisting it again. Mm-hmm. So I don't know if he went back to finish the book or not. I saw where his bookmark was, and it wasn't on the last page. So anyway, the book talks about, I know some of you already have the book. The book talks around a fictional group called the Mind Memory Institute, which is an organization that was created to help people achieve their goals. So it depends on the people knowing what their goals are. So these people with these goals, they're called clients. Initially they were called subjects, but there was some pushback on that because the people didn't want to be thought of as subjects in an experiment. So they decided to call them clients. Now the Institute was founded by this Dr. Renee Philippe, and it's got 4 mentors who work for the group, who work with the clients to help them, to guide them, to help them achieve their goals. It's all pretty straightforward, it seems. Now, as the story goes on and as this whole thing proceeds, they all start to realize that the mentors, this Philippe and the others, Gina, Brad, Megan, and Riley, they are the mentors. They are also starting to realize they're clients as well, because the folks that they thought of as clients are starting to influence them and their goals. And of course, Philippe, the executive director, he's got his own agenda, if you will, going on. And he is starting to work with some of them as clients, whether they know it or not. So the, let's see here. The way this works, and I'll read a little bit out of here. Usually in book readings like this, somebody reads a chapter or a subset or something, and they're just going to read a few words, maybe 5 minutes of stuff altogether, jumping around in here to give you a feeling for what this organization is. The Mind Memory Institute explores the relationships among the human brain, the mind, and memory with the goal of helping clients improve their abilities in areas where they have particular interest. Now, I know somebody who read that and they felt, oh, this book is beyond me. But I think if you've had a chance to read the book, I think you'll see it's fairly easy reading. Going on, we explore the relationships by exposing our selected volunteer clients to images and sounds relevant to their goals. We use linguistics, hypnosis, relaxation to reach the subconscious. For our program, hypnosis is scientific, not entertainment. Now, this takes place in what's called a mentoring college, which is associated with the university. And there's a mentoring room in the cottage where a lot of this activity takes place. And the room is a round room, no wall. It's got walls, but it's got one circular wall. There's a door to get in. There are no paintings on the walls. There's no decorations on the walls. And they're basically off-white. The reason being, they have a projector, sort of like this, several projectors on the ceiling, projecting images that are appropriate for the client. So one of the clients, Ralph, wants to paint like the masters. So his session consists of the projecting of masters' paintings, Van Gogh and Renoir and so forth, on the wall, and some narrative may be happening at the same time. And the point is to just immerse Ralph in what's going on. Now, we also have another client is Sadie. She wants to be a musician, so hers is more music oriented. And there's two more subjects here. The idea here being immersion. Get away from your day-to-day stuff. Let this flow. Let this flow. As part of what's going on here, they record all of the activities that are happening at this in the center here. These recordings help us observe and analyze interactions to guide our research and to facilitate changes in our programs. By the way, these 2 pages happen to be the front and back of a flyer that's given to each client so that they know what to expect. And then the next 2 pages is another flyer that's given out, and this one talks more about the brain, the mind, the memory, and that kind of stuff. I'm not going to go into that right now, but I will entertain questions. So what happened, like in Ralph's case, is he came to this, and this describes how he heard about the organization and how he got introduced to this. He then started doing some painting, and based on master's work, so he was given tickets to go to an art gallery and look at art, and then go home. He was given canvases and brushes and paints and everything he needs. Then he went home and started painting. So he saw a Van Gogh painting, he went home, painted the Van Gogh painting. He saw another painting, he went home and did that. So he did 3 or 4 of these. And they suggested he take these paintings back to the art gallery and show it to the curator. And the curator was very impressed. And the curator brought in security because the curator's wondering about this. These look like forgeries. Well, one of the security people, after looking at this, he says, these are better than the originals. Now, how can that happen? So, and he also, Ralph also took these to a pawn shop. And a somewhat similar thing happened where the people in the pawn shop were very impressed with what's going on. So that's Ralph's story in a nutshell, but there's a lot more to it, and I'm not going to go into the whole story here. Then Sadie wanted to be a musician. She develops the ability to hear music and then play music. And she wanted to get, well, let's drift back to Ralph for a minute. He was able to paint like the masters, but then he realized that's not satisfying because that's all he could do. So then they put together a program to allow him to do creative painting. So they hooked up with some organization who would then put together specialized videos, not like YouTube videos, getting into the creative aspects of painting. And Manning certainly knows all about this, values and shapes and the artist's elements and the principles and that sort of stuff. So he's then able to break out of that shell. And there's a little analysis going on here. If he can paint after seeing a Van Gogh painting, can he paint after seeing a photograph of a Van Gogh painting? And the answer is no. Well, why not? Well, so it gets explored a little bit here. At one point he wants to paint a landscape looking out his bedroom window. And landscape is 3-dimensional. There's flowers, there's trees, it goes out. So he made the assumption he'd take a photograph, which would then be a flat surface, and he could paint that. But he discovered that didn't work either. So they had to drill into why did this happen like this? And a sense has developed that it's because of Van Gogh personally having painted and putting the brush strokes on the canvas. That is what allowed Ralph to do this. And if it was looking at just a photograph of a Van Gogh painting, well, the brush strokes aren't there. It's just the appearance. So a similar thing happened with Sadie with the musician. There's also Mark, who's a writer. But I want to read a little snippet about Albert because, each of those folks, their goals changed a little bit when they realized they could do what they set out to do. Well, maybe that wasn't fulfilling enough. So let me just introduce Albert. I'm just going to read a couple of pages of his chapter. I know because I wrote it. All of these chapters sort of introduce the people and where they came from. So here's Albert's story. For Albert's 5th birthday, his mother, Pauline, asks, "What special gift would you like for your birthday Saturday?" some paper, some pencils, a ruler, and a compass for drawing circles. What kind of a gift is that? We're having a party with your cousins and friends. Wouldn't you want some toys or clothes to open? Nope. Herman, his father, buys the items on Albert's list in the school supplies aisle in the store and includes a pencil sharpener, a pen, and an eraser. After happy birthday and how old are you and the cake and ice cream, Albert opens his gifts. Toys from friends, toys and clothes from cousins, and a large package and a small package from his parents. The large package, a baseball, a mitt, and a baseball cap. And then the small package, oh boy, pencils, a ruler, a compass, a pen, a pencil sharpener, just what I wanted. There's one more thing in the package. What's that? It's an eraser. I don't need an eraser. So, years later, 8th grader Albert walks the half-mile home from school every day for lunch. What do you want for lunch today? Hot dog, bologna sandwich, or peanut butter and jelly? Same as always, a hot dog with lots of mustard, but not on the handle end. Albert notices the percolator coffee pot on the stove, runs to his room, returns with a ruler, a pencil, and some paper. He goes to the junk drawer for a calculator. While eating his daily boiled hot dog, left hand holding the unmustarded end, he measures the pot's diameter, its height, and the dimensions of the base and the spout. He writes a few numbers on the paper. Now I need pie. We don't have dessert with lunch. No, the other pie, for calculating. So, little calculator arithmetic, and he announces the volume of the coffee pot. Wondering how much a full pot weighs, he measures a half-gallon jug from the refrigerator, calculates the capacity of the coffee pot in gallons. He guesses the gallon of water weighs around 8 pounds, and he calculates the weight of the full pot. How'd you figure all that out? It's easy. This morning we learned the formula for calculating the volume of a cylinder, so I measured the pot and measured the base and did some arithmetic. I figured in the spout too. You must know what you're doing. I trust you know what you're doing. You're so into math, aren't you? Yep. So, Albert's goals, this is a snippet of Albert, but his goals are, he's a slow reader, and he doesn't pick up on things. So his goal was to improve his reading speed and to improve his comprehension. So he goes to the center here, and they ask him to read a couple of stories about scientists and then write up little summaries of them. So he does that, and he turns these papers in, and they're very well done. They're given to someone in a science or math department to look at, and those folks are very impressed. And they come to the realization that Albert is not a slow reader. He grasps things differently than the rest of us do. And one of the professors had said he has a sense for essence. He grasps the essence of things quickly, and he understands how to put things together in his head. So Albert's goals then changed from being a faster reader to doing something more in the science and math world. I told you a little bit about those 4 folks. Now, it turns out there's monthly meetings or weekly meetings between the director and the mentors to talk about how the program is going and that kind of stuff. And they discuss how each of these people is progressing. Now, it turns out that, as you might guess, there's Dr. Philippe. He is the executive director, and he's got these the mentors whom he has hired. And it turns out, when they were asked to apply to this, they were asked to provide photographs of themselves, which is sort of an odd thing, but nobody caught on to that at that moment, what that might mean. So these mentors did that, and we still don't really know why, I guess, unless you read the book, why he wanted that. But he tries to establish a relationship with at least one of the mentors, and then that mentor sort of becomes his client, and she doesn't realize it. And you might guess where this is going, and it sort of goes there. So he, at some point in time after several things have happened, it turns out he is asked to leave the university and to leave the institute, the Mind Memory Institute. And it's never really expressed why that has happened, although there's suspicions about it. And if you read a little bit between the lines, I think you see what went on there. The book then talks about how Gina became the executive director, very well respected. She changed a lot of things about the way the organization worked. It used to be very loosely operated because here this director was eager to do stuff, so he didn't bother with the legal aspects, the ethical aspects, any of this kind of stuff. He just charged ahead, or plummeted ahead, like I like to say. But then, and this was starting to bother some of the mentors there, so at some point in time then, or when Gina took over, she started to organize the group better. And the book goes into that sort of thing. There was one other mentor who sort of stayed in the background, Riley. He wasn't really the same sort of mentor. He didn't work with clients. He sort of handled all the back room stuff. He handled all the electronics and the move, keeping track of the videos and that kind of stuff, and all the recorded things going on, all the activities going on there. So he was responsible for that library of things. So he's not well developed necessarily in the book for a reason. And the reason just might be because he might be part of the next book in the series. But he is very instrumental in helping to find out why Philippe should be removed from the university, because of all of these audio and video recordings that were occurring that Philippe should have known about and maybe forgot, but it sort of got him. So there's a chapter in there that says, and where are they now? All these people. And I'm not going to tell you. And I suggest if you do read the book, please don't jump ahead. Work into it, because there's some surprises. There's some surprises throughout the book, and there's some humorous stuff, at least humorous in my head. So I mentioned these, Sense the Essence was one of the things. A couple of these clients, imitating musicians playing the piano and that. So she feels she's imitating that work. Ralph is imitating the master painters. And they come to a conclusion that imitation is limitation, really, because they're just doing what those people did. So they're limiting themselves. So this was something that the mentors learned in this whole process. So they made a big sign on the wall, imitation is limitation, so that people know that can happen. But is that bad? Well, it depends, like everything. One of the senses that they come to realize in the painting world, for example, if you imitate other works in the sense that you imitate how they develop their colors or their designs or that kind of stuff, that doesn't, you're imitating how they came to do this, not what they did, which is a very different thing, because then they can apply that to their own work, basically. So, what else can I tell you about here? A couple other quotes I put in there. Sadie, the musician, she learns in class there, if you don't make mistakes, you don't learn. If you don't fail, you can't succeed. So that became a sign that they posted in the center there. Another one, which I find very interesting, every new beginning comes from starts this again. Every new beginning comes from some other new beginning's end. Oh. So it sort of says, things just progress, they evolve. So I'd be glad to discuss anything you want with it. The book is now available in the library here for circulation purposes, which I think is fantastic. Thank you very much for doing that.
Of course.
There's two copies, one for circulation, one for local authors. And I went and looked at both of them, and I'm gonna sign them both before I leave here today. Some folks have asked, how do I find out about this stuff? How do I, research this stuff and that? Well, what's interesting is you may have heard of the Great Courses, thegreatcourses.com. It's a fantastic service, if you will. They have CDs and online classes and courses on so many things, hundreds of topics, and very reasonably priced. You can get their catalog, and the catalog, we get one, every couple days at times, it seems. So you get the catalog, and it says this one on whatever, pick something on sewing. They have one on introductory sewing. The normal price of this CD is $200. I'm just throwing numbers up. But for this sale, it's only $30. So we wait till that happens. And so I've accumulated a number of interesting videos on that. Carol didn't make it here after all. She gives these talks on Paleolithic art, and she also has a collection of these videos from the Great Courses. There's a lot of good stuff on YouTube. There's a lot of junk on YouTube. So you gotta be selective, but you learn who to watch. Scientific American, a few issues of Scientific American have some interesting articles. And the library. Now, this library is good, but let me tell you what's a great research library, NCCC. And I didn't go to NCCC, but I live in Niagara County. I can therefore get a free library card to borrow stuff from NCCC Library. That's true for all of us who live in Niagara County. So if you want to do some serious stuff, they got a good research section, good collection of books that Carol has scanned through and that I've gone through, and CDs I've gotten there. It's quite the library. And when I was there, they had moved into a temporary area while they were reconstructing the library. Now they moved back. I haven't been there to the new library yet. Mary Ann?
The Great Courses are also available through Hoopla, which is a product the library you have access to with your library card.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Well, that's good to know.
Yeah, Hoopla is a streaming source that everybody has access to through your library card.
It's free?
Well, your tax dollar pays for it, but it's, yes.
Yeah, well, sure, well, certainly,
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so Hoopla is something that you might want to take a look at if you want to take a look at some of the Great Courses.
Well, that's good to know. I know there used to be some Great Courses in the shelves here.
It's relatively new to Hoopla.
Okay, well, suggest,
So you know.
there are so many topics available: how to write, how to paint, how to draw, Paleolithic art, history, politics, finance, mathematics, all sorts of stuff. It's overwhelming.
Yeah.
And they're marketing with some new programs now that are interesting too, to pay for services. But if you can get it free through Hoopla,
Right.
Hoopla,
Right.
check it out. I'm gonna check it out tonight.
And if anybody needs help with that, just come up to the 3rd floor, and whichever one of us are at the desk, we'll be happy to show you how you can access that.
Yes.
Mike, congratulations on getting your book available in the library. That's pretty cool. Good for you. I just wanted to ask about your book. Do each of the characters in the book have like particularly peculiar or extraordinary skills like you described with Ralph in his painting? Are they each like a unique individual?
Well, everyone is unique. So that part's easy. They did not necessarily have these unique or fantastic skills beforehand. Their skill was they knew, I want to become a good painter. I want to become a good musician. I want to become a faster reader, but then he becomes a mathematician. So each of them grows into what he really wanted, he or she really wanted, if they can discipline themselves to want to become something else, something more. It was a very good question. More questions? How many people have read the book? Okay, I'm gonna ask you questions.
I didn't finish the book, but I did start it.
A lot of folks, for some reason, they read as far as Ralph or Sadie, and then they put the book down, and then they come back to it later, which is fine, because generally they do come back to it later. But I'm always interested in getting feedback, and if you do read the book, I'd appreciate you putting a posting up on Amazon. Whether you buy the book from Amazon or you buy it direct here, your comments are welcome, and you can give it 5 stars through 1 star, whatever. And put some feedback there so I know what impressions people have of the book. Now, I've talked to some folks who have the book, who haven't yet posted a comment, but they still tell me about things and ask me questions. So it's worthwhile to me. I mentioned before that I hope to write the second in the series. And I mentioned before, Riley was a seemingly minor character in this book. Well, he's been elevated in the next book.
I have another question. If this book became a movie, what actor would play Dr. Philippe? I already have an idea of who I think should play him. Who do you have in mind? Like what actor would be in your head to match that doctor?
This is a very, very difficult question for me because I don't know many actors.
Oh.
I don't watch movies. So
my preference would be Anthony Hopkins. I think
Oh,
he
that's
would make a
interesting.
brilliant Dr.
I just
Philippe.
pictured him a little taller, though.
A little taller Anthony Hopkins. That's the verdict from
was
the
he
group.
was he the Hannibal Lecter guy?
Yes.
Okay.
You know, because he always plays a little bit of a creepy character.
Okay.
I'm just saying.
You know, interesting. I belong to a couple writers groups, and I read a passage of this at the writers group, and I talked about Renee Philippe. You may remember this. And there's like 8 or 10 members of the group, so we go through this, and then I ask, okay, tell me about Renee. The women in the group thought it was a woman. The men in the group thought it was a man. And I purposely did not identify it at that point. So I thought that was interesting. And Renee is French for reborn, which I felt was an appropriate name for this guy.
Interesting.
Are they two individual, or is his name René Philippe?
His name is René Philippe, yes. In the book, he chose to refer to himself as Philippe. I didn't want to emphasize the René part for some reason, I'm not sure why. But, you know, everybody calls him Philippe, or he at one point suggests, well, this was to Albert, I think, when he introduces himself, he says, well, I'm René Philippe, you can call me Philippe, or you can call me Ray. And Albert, with his sense of humor, says, is that like a ray of hope? So there's some subtle humor in here, I think. So.
Just for the record, though, I did think of this guy from the beginning.
Oh, Renee?
Yeah, I did.
Oh, did you?
I
Okay.
don't know why.
Okay.
I don't know what hint I would have had that I thought he was, but
Okay. Well, for those of you who read the book, you read a little bit about Riley. What do you think about Riley? Now, I'm putting you on the spot,
Yeah.
I realize.
I only got
That's
as far
okay.
as Ralph. I didn't read
Okay.
far enough yet to get to Riley.
That's okay.
I read it a couple months ago, and I know he was a very special character. He was unique, like you said. He was like different from the others.
He was. He was kept under Renee's thumb a lot. He followed Renee around,
Oh, okay.
doing
He
whatever
was-
Renee
yeah.
wanted. Oop. Let's change that. I gotta change what I said. Rewind. Riley followed Renee around, doing what Renee wanted. Just changed a word there. Yes?
I have not read your book yet, and I actually want to get it tonight. I wanted to ask, since this is one book, when you describe it, you describe all these stories, so how did you manage to get all that information in something small that's like a valid question for you or not? Just
How did I manage to
I
what?
just find it really, interesting that you're able to take these people's stories and just, put enough detail in them. Your book is so small, so I was just impressed by it, I
Well,
guess.
Let me tell you one thing. When I started writing this
Ask.
book, it was going a very different direction.
Yeah.
And then as I learned more about this process, I changed that direction. So a lot of the stuff I had in the book, I had deleted but saved. So I still have it for the future. But what I ended up doing, I've written a lot of short stories, a lot of poems, and I've been published in a number of places. And I thought, well, a novel, I know it's more than a bunch of short stories, but somehow I can do it, so I worked with it. What I ended up doing here is, if you look at the, the way this is set up in the table of contents, there's a forward introduction, talks about the research journals that these mentors are working on. Then there's Ralph's story, okay? So that's basically a good-sized chapter, that's 34 pages here. So that pretty well deals with Ralph, except for a little bit of wrap-up towards the end. Then there's Sadie. So they don't, I was thinking of having them progress together. Ralph's session is on Monday, Sadie on Tuesday, and that was getting very difficult for me to keep straight in my head. So I figured I'll just separate them out. So there's not necessarily a chronology to them. I don't know if that's answering the question, but it's
I
sort
didn't
of.
really give you much of a question, so.
But it was sort of, that was a tough thing for me to grapple with, because
I
I
know
started.
it'd be tough for me because you have so much you talked about tonight and then trying to fit it in something smaller, and choosing the parts that you want to keep and.
Well, I guess an easy answer is it sort of just happens. I found out, and I'm not trying to minimize it, but what I found out is, as I'm working on this, I'm sitting at the keyboard, and suddenly I realize my fingers are writing the story. So I have to go back and read it to see what my fingers wrote. What a weird feeling that is. So it took it in directions that I didn't start out with, but that I ended up with. But I deleted a lot of material here, and I moved stuff around, and ideas I had maybe for Mark and the writer, they started in Ralph's space, but then moved over. Ralph was the first character I really wrote about, and then Sadie, and then Albert, and then Mark.
How long did it take you to finish the book?
About 8 months, I believe, which I didn't know what to expect. And I thought that was at a pretty good clip, but I've been able to just write, go and write. For a period of time, every day, Carol knows this, every morning, I'd be at the library upstairs, working on my book from 9 to 12 or something like that, or 9 to 2 o'clock, and I missed lunch and all this kind of stuff. So I invested a lot of time in it. I'm retired, so I don't have to work. That taking my time. So I was able to really focus on it. And then working through Gina's story is interesting. There's a number of other characters in the book that are essential to make the story go, but hers turned out to be relatively straightforward because somehow my mind had figured out the direction that this should go in. And I don't understand it, and maybe some of you do understand how that works, but I must subconsciously have been thinking about this for a period of time so I could then type it. Yes. There's this joke, I don't know if I'll get it right here, but writing is easy. All you do is sit in front of the keyboard and let the words flow off your fingers. And the way you deal with writer's block has something to do with having your head hit the keyboard and bleeding all over. I don't know the exact quote, but I'm sure artists have the same sort of thing. How do you get past this artist block?
Yeah.
So, yes.
You just alluded to thinking about this before you started actually writing. What kind of time frame could you put to your thought process? Did you have the whole book formulated in your head before you put your fingers to the keyboard, or did it come to you as you started?
I had the whole book formulated in my head, but that wasn't this book. This book evolved because I realized I was going down dead ends or or paths that I didn't want to go in because that would either, for whatever reason, there's a lot of reasons I didn't want to pursue that. I wanted to go a different direction. And a lot of it was the research I was doing was helping me realize maybe other ways of doing things. There's another interesting aspect to that question. And the question you would ask about how long did it take to write the book? Well, let's see, about 70 years.
Yeah.
Because it's all of your experience. You know, we know this fellow George Miller. He's not related to me. Somebody asked him once. He's a fantastic painter, unbelievable. Somebody asked him, "How long did it take you to paint that?" "Oh, 65 years."
Mhm.
And it's true. He's got all this experience that has grown over this period of time. Now, I'm not in the category of George. So, what else? The book's available. I'd like your feedback on it, your comments.
Would you tell us about the rest of your books there, Mike?
Oh, sure. Well, after, let's start with this one. It's Your Book. I do self-publish, I help people self-publish their books. Mine are self-published, which means I put it together using a division of Amazon that used to be called Create Space, which I thought was a great name. Now they changed the name to KDP, stands for Kindle Direct Printing, I think it is. Well, to me that name doesn't have quite the feel to it. But anyway, that's what I use. So I helped a friend put together a book a number of years ago. She wrote a book of poetry, and I put it together for her, and I used Create Space at the time. And I thought in the process, I'm going through this whole experience of creating a book, so why don't I write it down for myself? And then I figured, well, why don't I write it down so other people can maybe buy the book and figure out how to do it themselves? So that's what this became. Now, folks, I've done about 30 books so far, and folks who want books done like that first one, I generally read every book at least once for grammar, punctuation, spelling maybe, and that. That first book I had to add a comma in one place. The book was very well done. So, you know, it came together very, very well. Some books I've had to spend much more time on. A couple of books I did, you know, I'll put pictures in them. There's 2 books I've worked on that each has 130 roughly pictures in it. That's a bunch of work. So you got to place them correctly. You know, if the picture has to do with the text, you got to make sure it's near the text, and you want it such that the text that's related to it is visible at the same time, preferably, so you don't have the picture on one side and the text on the back of that page. So I've helped a number of people with their books. I've helped Kathy here with hers. Kathy has 2 books, exceptional books. Who else here? You're the only one.
Oh,
Think here, right?
yes.
Yes, yeah. Some of the books take more effort because of various things. In one case, somebody you maybe know, Dick Lane. He's a retired conservation officer. Well, Carol was co-author with Dick on his book, and his was a very nice book. It's like 400 pages or so, including photographs and drawings that one of his wrestling students, was it, or somebody did. We put his book together, and Carol, as co-author, had to adopt his writing personality, his writing persona, because of the vocabulary he uses and the expressions he uses. So she put that together, and one Saturday night we're ready to submit it to Create Space to get a proof copy, and the phone rings, and there's Dick. And Dick, congratulations. You know, I have a couple more stories, or I forget what exactly he said.